Dave's done a brilliant intro for me, but just to repeat, I'm Kim Jones, run the Make Do agency along with a few other of my colleagues that are here today. You might have picked up on the fact that this is our event, FrontEndNorth. We also run events sort of as a side gig, because really a distraction, the events that we run, from the real work. And that real work boils down to building websites. We're a specialist WordPress agency, and we are hiring. Now, we're after WordPress developers, obviously front-end developers. We got a little stand in the sponsor room. Go on the website, fill in the form, or just come and talk to me, Dave, Matt's at the back as well, in the drinks later on, if you're interested in maybe trying it out. We're also looking for freelance resource. Doesn't have to be local to Sheffield. We're based as a remote team all over the place. So if you're interested in that, come and find us. And back to why we are here. It was a small note on the last slide, but I'm an ex-designer, ex-front-end developer. And like most of us that sort of find ourselves starting a business, working in web, I started out as a technician. I was an engineer, really a designer. And this was back when web designer was still a job and basically did everything. And that evolved into front-end developer. And it was my idea, my sort of passion for front-end about 4 years ago that started us to come up with the idea for this event. Because I could see that front-end development was, and probably still is, the most fast-paced, the most exciting area of web development. And so I thought, let's run a conference. We'll bring people together, get the community together, talk about front-end topics, and get an idea for what we're doing. I don't actually write front-end code anymore, so today's been pretty boring for me, but you get the point. So this is not a sales talk. I am not really a salesperson. I'm not an expert in sales by any means, but what I do know is that sales covers everything that we do. You might not agree with that, but you need to be able to sell what you do, and that might be to a client, a customer, but it might be to your boss, it might be to a business partner, and without sales or an understanding of how to sell what you're trying to do, you're not able to do that. So these topics I've pulled together come from my experience working in the industry for nearly 20 years. I mean, really, the sales stuff's come quite late in my career. It's just been really the past 2 years when I started to investigate how agencies sell services and products. So before we start with the main section of the talk, I'm going to have a slight intermission. Be patient, and hopefully a point will be made. So, CSS 3. Webpack, HTML5, HAML, NPM, Ajax, Foundation, Node.js, Grunt, Sass, CoffeeScript, JSON, Bower, YAML, JavaScript, Gulp, BEM, Vue, Babel, jQuery, Angular, React, Yarn, ES6, Bootstrap, Backbone, Git, Handlebars, Modernizer, Normalize. Let's stop there, because really the point I'm trying to make is, oh my God, no wonder we need conferences for this topic when we've got to deal with this. And this is just a small gathering of tools and technology that I've used over the years as a front-end developer. Some of them are old, some of them are new, but one of the problems is there are new ones out every day, new things. It changes all the time. There's probably things that have been mentioned today in this conference that are missing from this wall of acronyms that really need to be in there. But the point is that selling this and everything around this is really hard, because it doesn't make sense to anyone but the people in this room. So I've put together 10 topics, because 10 is a nice number. And they cover some of the things I've learned as, if you like, a salesperson running our agency since we started out, probably, 4 or 5 years ago. There's things I've learned about sales, things I've learned about writing proposals, working with marketing teams, and I'm going to start with something that we all should be aware of, and that's the value that front end offers. So number one is that you've got to look for the true value in what it is that you do. So the question is, what value do all of the tools, all of the technologies provide you as a front end developer? Everything that was on that wall of text. Well, what they do is make maybe you better than other developers because potentially you use them in a more effective and efficient way. But it's not easy to find value in something that's as abstract as the front end without sounding too simplistic or taking it to the other end and getting incredibly confusing. Something that's a little bit easier, especially from my perspective in an agency, is the CMS. So this is our business. We are a WordPress specialist agency, and CMS tools are a very easy thing to sell. Because if you tell a prospective client that they'll be able to log in, manage their content, add new posts, add new pages, maybe even change the layout of the home page, it adds instant value. It's something they can instantly see benefit in, and they'll say, I want that. I want to be able to do that. But after that, you might say, well, we're also going to use a REST API displayed with isomorphic JavaScript written in React with a custom modular layout written in Sass that has dependencies managed in Yarn. That's going to turn their eyes around, and they're going to think, I thought we were just managing content. So it's that balance between something that's easy and adds value and this. There's no intrinsic value to any of this to a client or someone who wants to buy this from you. Now, clearly, we all know there's value in things like BEM, things like Yarn. They make us work faster. They make the work easier to maintain, more standardized. And these are things that will help you do better work and help you sell that work, but you've got to frame it in a non-technical way. Because most customers don't care about front-end technology. They only care about the value it brings and how it can help them achieve their objectives, what they want to do. So use different words like the ones we've got here that are related to the work that you do. So is it fast? Will it be reliable? Are you delivering quality work? Will it give me the results that I need? And results is a great word. Everyone loves that in sales. And will it be easy to use, easy to understand? Will it be secure? And security is something that we still need to talk about, even if front-end code has no real security issues. Clients, customers, your boss needs to know that the code that you're writing is secure. Even if it's just an offhand comment, say, yeah, we're writing secure code, we're making sure that it's tested. And all of these things aimed at clients help you realize that you need to know your audience. So who are you trying to sell to? Are you selling to another agency, to the private sector, to a technical firm, to the NHS? Dave mentioned I worked in the NHS for over 10 years, and that was a hard challenge, working with a technical background in the NHS. Are you selling to the bank manager to get some money off him? You've got to change your language, change your message, adapt and evolve accordingly, and sometimes it's really easy. So there's the easy sell, and this is you selling to you. Someone with your own goals, with your own mindset, and a similar technical background. So this is freelancer to agency. You've got technical skills that we need as an agency. So all I need to know is, are you any good at it? Come and work with us, we'll find out. It's based on a purely technical understanding. Easy. Agency to agency is much the same. We do some partner work with other agencies. They either have overspill or they don't have the technical know-how in-house, but they know that we've got it, so they hire us in to fill those gaps. It's easy. It's so easy to work in that relationship. And it's this, technician to technician. I started out as a technician. Most of us in this room are technicians. And it's easy because when you look at this, they get all gooey and it washes over them. They lap it up. This is what they want. They're the audience for this type of thing. But there's someone else. and that is them. The hard sell is you with your technical hat on trying to sell to them, someone who doesn't understand what really front end is. And the way I describe them, especially today, is the people that are not in this room. So people that didn't come to this conference, they're generally the people that aren't going to get anything out of it and probably would sit there bamboozled and not really understand any of the tech. This is a challenge, and it's about writing proposals, crafting marketing, coming up with a persona for a typical person in industry, finding clients, and the hard sell is hard because it's nothing to do with technology. You've got to think about this kind of person, your grandmother, parents, and often they ask you, what is it you do again in your job when you sat at your laptop all day? Now, if you come back with something like, I don't know, yesterday I wrote some isomorphic JavaScript which interacts with JSON object that Dave output, they're going to be like, what, is this a real job? But ultimately, the easy thing to reply is, and I'm sure most of us do this, you know, it was Christmas recently, I'm sure we all visited family and they were like, well, so what are you doing at work? Basically, I'm making websites. That's all you've got to say. You're making websites. They'll get that. They might even not really know where a website is, but I'm sure they've been on Google. They understand the simplest term, I make websites, we make websites. So it's about language, about the words that we use to communicate, and also what the values and benefits are of making these websites. So number 3 is you've got to improve your language. So this is the words you use in proposals. It's the words you have on your website. It's words on your marketing material. It's words that you use on the phone or in a face-to-face. And from personal experience for me, this is where I really struggled when we first started out. I was a technician selling to technicians early on, and it was easy. It got harder and harder when we tried to break away from that. And it's one of the reasons I'm here today doing this talk, because it's been a bumpy ride, and obviously we're still learning from it. Because this is probably where we all are. We have a technical background and a technical headspace. Now, I got into front end making websites because I love technology, computers, laptops, phones, video games, whatever it is. If it's technology, this is me. I'm interested in it. And I'm sure people in this room are as well. If you apply that passion for technology to sales, even if you're selling a technical product like a laptop or a website, it doesn't really work that well. You know, people don't often buy cars because of the amount of carburetors in them, for example. They buy them for very different reasons. So how do we offer value without using buzzwords? Without throwing in things like HTML5, things like React into our proposals? Well, you need to get to the point where you're able to explain the benefits and value of your front-end development, not the nuts and the bolts. And you can communicate these benefits. If you can get it done in the right way, then you're finally getting somewhere. But it's not easy, because we're all hardwired in this room to talk technology and to fall back to technology. We were doing a pitch on Monday, me and Matt, who's the agency co-founder, and Matt's still very technically led, and this was a non-technical session. They were all using Dells that were about 10-year-old. It was very old school. And whenever Matt started to bring up the technical side of things, we had to, in many ways, apologize and say, oh, sorry to get too technical. And if you find yourself saying that in a pitch or find yourself saying that on a phone call, then you need to evaluate why you keep saying it. So here's some exciting and fun wordage from our past. So these are some examples, and these are actually from old proposals and sales and marketing and our old websites, stuff that we put into our sales literature that we thought would help us get work. So I've split it into 2 areas. At the top, we've got something technical, confusing, and pointless. And at the bottom, we've got something better, something more focused, something helpful. And I'll need a drink for this because some of them are a real mouthful. So number 1, I'm experienced in HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. What did we say earlier? I make websites. Keep it simple. Adding HTML5 to the end of HTML was the worst thing anyone ever did, because someone who doesn't understand it, what about HTML6? Is 5 even the most and why is CSS 3.3 and not 5? Like, it gets really confusing. And even if you just put HTML and CSS, then they might be thinking, does he mean HTML5 or HTML4? It's really, boil it down, you make websites. Oh, I love this one. We use HTML5, CSS3, JS powered by Grunt. What does that mean? Sass and modular CSS. We make websites. Again, this is we make websites, so this was from our old agency site. Big one coming up now. Templates will be analyzed to promote keywords into semantic elements such as strong text, headings, and titles. HTML5, there it is again. Semantic markup will also be used along with microformats, and we struggled with this. I was reading it last night with Matt, and the only way we could boil it down was Google will be able to read your website. Because it's an SEO question. They care that you're putting the time and effort in to make sure that the website's going to work with Google. It gets worse. To support modern HTML semantic elements, the minimum browser requirements will be Internet Explorer, brackets IE, close brackets 8, brackets with JavaScript enabled, IE 9 without JavaScript. Oh, we'll make it work with Internet Explorer. Just say that. No one really that's buying from you, unless they're a real tech nerd, even know that there's an Internet Explorer 8, 9, 10, 11, and whatever. They probably never went through the pain that we all did with early versions of Internet Explorer, but they do know that they use it, and it needs to work with it. Another big one coming up. Templates will be designed with modern web standards in mind. HTML5 and CSS3, there they are again. They will render consistently in modern browsers and degrade gracefully in older browsers. So I jazzed this one up a bit and said, we'll use our experience and skills, value, to ensure that it works great on all devices, which is all you needed to say, really. You didn't have to talk again about web standards and HTML5. This is another big one. Got this from one of our first ever proposals to a local agency. All pages will be developed to comply with Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, brackets WCAG. Version 2 to AA, brackets AA. Standard, these are the standards that the government recommends. Your website will be built so that it complies with recommended standards. You don't need to have brackets WCAG, brackets AA. It just doesn't make sense. And the thing is, I remember reading this and thinking, yes, we're going to win this. And this is a great one. We use modern CSS grid with polyfills and industry standard breakpoints to ensure your layouts remain consistent at any screen size. Your website will look great on any device. All the responsive design ones are the best because it's just everyone trying to say the same thing in a million different ways. So modern, mobile first, and responsive web design services. Again, your website will display perfectly on any device, no matter how big or small. That's a lot more salesy. That's actually one example where the better example is a little bit longer than the original. But this is actually taken directly from our website. So if you go to makedo.net services, it's right there. We haven't removed it. I picked this up last night, and it's there. It's the main description of the website design section on our site. And yeah, it's all wrong. I hate that it's there, and I can't even think of a time when I'll be able to sit down and fix that and also fix all of the other things that are wrong with the site. So what I'm trying to say is it's not just anyone else. We're as guilty of this as anyone else, and it's a slow process. It's a hard process to fix. So moving on to number 4, there's stuff that we need to stop saying. And this is another level of the language thing, and it's about the stuff that we say on our websites, potentially on our business cards, in our proposals, and it's close to being absolutely useless because it doesn't really get the message across. And it's stuff like, I am experienced in HTML5. The thing is, right, you're supposed to be experienced in HTML5. It is your job. Don't brag about your job being that you're experienced in HTML5. It's like saying this, we use responsive design. You're supposed to use responsive design. It's been around long enough. Everybody has a smartphone now. If you're building websites today without using responsive design, then what are you doing? Non-responsive design? There's no end to these sort of responsive design variants. They're amazing. Again, I test all of my work in different browsers and on different screen sizes. Guess what? You're supposed to test all of your work on different browsers and different screen sizes. Why are we saying this? I make sure my code follows modern standards and is efficiently written. Again, you're supposed to write efficient code to modern standards. This is your job. Don't brag about it. It's not an aspiration to know HTML5. It's a job requirement. Car mechanics don't put on their website, we're awesome at oil changes. We've got 10 years experience in changing tires. It's just assumed knowledge. If you need a new tire or an oil change, you'll take it to a garage and they'll be able to do it. And this all relates to my next point, number 5, which is that accessibility should not be an optional extra. It should just be part of the job. And accessibility is a hard sell. We could do a talk just on how to sell accessibility if we had time. People don't understand it. A good percentage of people in this room probably haven't got a full grasp on it. So let's stop trying to sell it and putting it in our proposal, and let's just do it and get it over with. Don't try and put WCAG AA as an add-on. Don't have it as a separate cost or as part of a separate sprint in your agile workflow. We're going to make it accessible in week 3. Just do it from day 1. And yes, it requires more work, and more work equals more time generally, but I don't buy that. I think if you make it part of the process and build it for accessibility from the start, then you shouldn't need to sell it. And I was thinking there are other ways I could come up with a description of this. And luckily, this tweet showed up in my feed a couple of days ago from another conference. And it says, the biggest misconception about accessibility is that by adding it, you're doing someone a favor. You're not. It's your job. That sums it up pretty well. And there's another area that's very similar to accessibility that people go on about as this optional add-on extra that's a lot more work, and that's performance. Performance should not be an optional extra. So speed, making a website load fast. All of your code should be written within reason, of course, with performance in mind from day 1. And just like accessibility, remember, the web is supposed to be for everyone. If you're releasing a large and bloated website that loads slowly, people aren't going to be able to use it. And if you look at the Speed Test Global Index, the UK is 43rd in global speed rankings. We're just behind Latvia and Lebanon. And, I mean, Iraq's at the bottom. So if you've got a website that's going to be big in Iraq, make sure it's fast. And it's not just that, the cost. Mobile data is a total rip-off. We are in the top 10 most expensive countries for mobile data. If you've got a website that's got 5 megabyte images on the homepage, then it's going to chew up people's data and it's going to ruin their experience on the web. They're probably never going to come back to your website. Bloated websites are no joke. Let's keep them as lean and as fast as we can and stop trying to sell this as an option. Let's just do it and make sure that our clients are aware that it's being done. Because if you ask them, they'll want a fast website. They'll want it to load fast. They'll just assume that you're going to do it because that's your job. So going back to less technical stuff now, number 7 is be a trusted partner. And I've borrowed this / stole this from a Jason Swank, who's an online agency coach you might have heard of. And he talks about Batman. And he says that all web developers, front-end developers, think of themselves as Batman. That they're the superhero in the client story, because they're the one that comes in, does the work, makes the magic happen, and then they leave. But that's not going to work, because the real superhero in that scenario is the client. So you need to step back and help them realize their goals. And you might then be thinking, oh, in that case, I'll be Robin. But you can't be Robin, because then you're a sidekick. And the difficulty then is that the client might end up being a sidekick. So you've got to be the other thing, which is Alfred. He's the guy that sits in the chair at the back of the Batcave. He does the laundry, and he makes sure that Batman can be Batman. And this was recently described in the new Spider-Man film as the guy in the chair. There was a whole bit on it. And I think this sums it up a lot better than the Alfred scenario, because I've got a short clip from the film where Ned, who is Peter Parker's best friend, finds out that he's Spider-Man and he wants to help him out and be involved. So he says, can I be the guy in the chair?
Go for Ned.
Ned, I need you to track my phone for me.
Yeah, but where is it? Genius move. Okay, he just passed the GameStop on Jackson Avenue.
Hey, where are the headlights on this thing? I'm in Flash's car.
I'll pull the specs.
Okay, you're on speakerphone.
He still flashes car. Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome, it's awesome. Get out of the way, get out of the way, move, move.
Peter, are you okay?
I've never really driven before, only with May in parking lots. This is a huge step up. Hey, have you gone through the happy yet?
Yeah, I'm working on it. I just gotta backdoor the phone system. Guy in the chair.
So that's when Ned becomes the guy in the chair. And the point is, you might feel like a superhero because you come to conferences like this and we all get G'd up and excited. But really, you need to be invisible, seamless, trusted by the client, the boss, whoever it is in the scenario that you're providing this service to. And that'll mean that you're essential to their goals. You might be sitting in the background at your laptop all day working on 3 or 4 screens like Ned does, but really that's what we do anyway. And if you can become that trusted partner, it'll lead to a long and healthy sales relationship and you'll keep getting work. And it wouldn't be a sort of sales talk without putting a slide from Glenn Ross in. And this is one of the best films about sales because it shows just how horrible and relentless sales can be. So this is the famous scene, Always Be Closing. And this is a message about how it works in their industry. I mean, I think they're selling holiday condos. We're not doing that. We're not selling cars. We're not selling something tangible that we're going to try and get, massive commission off. We're selling services. And ultimately, your front end needs to sell more than just the code that it is, and more than just the technology and the acronyms. You need to sell a relationship. So I put always be communicating. And this means that if you're always communicating, you'll get better. Because when I started out doing sales for our agency that were the hard sell, that is not technical to technical, I would sit on sales calls and I wouldn't know what I was doing. I would sit in pitches, I'd revert back to the technical and you could see people's eyes just glaze over. So you've got to practice, and it's really hard. I spend nowadays probably about 5 to 10 hours a week on sales calls. It's a big part of what I do, and that's just sitting on the phone with clients, asking questions, working out what they want and when they want it and how much it's going to cost. And, if I was doing that a few years ago, I would just be confused and bamboozled by the idea that why aren't I actually sitting down and writing code? And that's really the change in my mindset that's been coming over the past few years. And it means that if you keep doing it, you do eventually get a little bit better. So if you're always communicating with your client or other clients, even if you fail pitches, even if you don't succeed in getting the work that you want, your communication skills around sales and language and value and all the other stuff that we've looked at will get better. So what about pricing? I'm not going to talk too long about how to charge. These are some strategies that I was doing back when I was a freelancer that we took into the agency. The first you'll all recognize, this is a really easy one. It's the day rate model. It's based on something that we refer to as time and effort. So you clock in, you clock out, 8 hours, 10 hours, however many hours it is, and you say, thank you very much, I'll take a check for that. You might get booked in for a week at a time, months at a time, and we still do this as an agency. We book out devs on a day rate to other clients, but we've evolved that to retainers, and retainers are a little bit better. And again, you're selling a block of time, and this is often used for support, so just online help, but it's also, in our case, used for development. So they might buy from us 120 hours worth of time to use over a period of time to build something. And they might not know what that something is, but it means that they've got that assurance that we are there and we're available for them as an agency. And it's easier to sell a retainer like this than it is to do the next thing, which is the fixed project. This is the one where you've got to write a big proposal, where you've got a tender, where you've got to stand in front of them with a keynote and do a pitch potentially. And there's 5 or 6 people around the room looking through the proposal as you speak. And these are the big ticket jobs. These are the ones that we all want. And these are the hardest ones to not just win, but also price. So early on, I learned about price framing or price bundling. And this just helps you when you start to read a proposal or a piece of work on RFQ, for example, to work out, all right, how are we going to charge this when the time comes? So there's A, B, and C. B is your standard price, and this is what it says, what you pay, what you'd like your customers to pay most of the time. Over on the other side with A, this is the premium price. So if you've got a big name client, you know that they've got big budgets, deep pockets, then you might charge a bit more. And you might also think this is going to be really hard or undesirable work. It's going to stretch us to the limit. So we need to charge more. Otherwise, it's going to not be worthwhile. On the other end, you've got your value projects, and this isn't value-based pricing. This is just cheaper, lower end. These are things that you might do for a client that you can then say, okay, we did that for you, now let's work on all these other ideas you've got, but you're going to need more investment. It's also good for charity work or even favors. We're working on a project of that scale right now, but we're treating it just like we would any other standard price project. That doesn't make it any easier, but the long-term goal is that it will ultimately lead to more work. I'm going to end with number 10, and this is about changing your mindset around things like the value that you perceive, because sales is hard for one other reason, and that's failure. And you won't get it right early on. But you've got to learn from it, and you've got to adapt, and you've got to be resilient, because sales is like going on a date every night and getting left at the altar every other week. It's a nightmare. And you won't win any job. Your dream client will just take no notice of you early on. You'll just be small fry. Your website will be crap because you won't have time to update it. When really it should be a shining light for what you do. But if you do good work, then the sales will come. Now, last year, between around about September and the last quarter of the year, I remember we pitched for about 5 projects in a row, all pretty big, really stuff that we would, not just I would like to win from an agency growth perspective, but the team were like, yes, I can't wait to do that. I can't wait to get my hands on this. And we lost all of them. We lost one, and then I was like, oh, don't worry, there's the others. And then we lost another. And these, when you lose the third one, you start to think, crap, I bet it's because the proposals are and then you're reading through the proposals and finding all these errors, which some of which I've highlighted today. But you can't give up, because don't give up selling, don't give up trying, because if you stop thinking that you aren't valuable, then what's the point? Because there are probably reasons why you lost all of those pitches and all those bids and all those projects and didn't get to work with the people you wanted to work with. And there are probably reasons that are potentially outside of your control. And if they're based on cost, if you were too expensive or too cheap, then again, you can learn from that. So always ask questions at the end of pitches. Always try and find out, did we bamboozle you by putting all that stuff in about isomorphic JavaScript? And they might come back and say, yeah, we didn't really get those 3 pages on why WCAG was really important. So then you can change the language that you use when pitching in future pieces of work. So that is me done. We've reached the end. Thank you very much for listening. I will meet you all for a drink afterwards in the bar. I've been Kim Jones. This is FrontEndNorth, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.